Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host, joining us on the program. Mike, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing okay until I just got the word Carson Palmer wants his Heisman back.
You can have mine.
Yeah? Yeah, you got one?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. I don't have anything that you would ever want, so you don't have to worry about that.
Do you have any trophies on your mantle?
No, none. I have none. I could say something smart or funny or cute. I have none.
Okay.
I have nothing. I'm an embarrassment to everyone.
All right. Why is this report on Deshaun Watson feel a little more real than what we heard maybe a couple of weeks ago?
Well, we're getting closer and closer to the deadline for 2021. And look, back in late August, early September, this was pointing toward a transaction between the Texans and the Dolphins. The problem is the Dolphins refuse to blink when it comes to what the Texans want, and the Texans refuse to blink when it comes to what the Dolphins wanted to give. So it fell apart, but it continues to linger. It's going to happen either after the season or it's going to happen between now and November 2 at 4 p.m. Eastern. I think what happened yesterday was an effort by the Texans to get the word out to anyone else who may want to come to the table. We know a few weeks ago, the Panthers may have not been interested. Now maybe they are. A few weeks ago, the Broncos wouldn't have been interested. Now maybe they are. Let's see. Will the Eagles come to the table? Let's see, because if others come to the table, price goes up. And it may get Stephen Ross, who badly wants to make Watson a Miami Dolphin, finally say to the Texans, fine, we'll give you what you want. The Texans don't want to relent because they don't look at it as a 1 or a 2 year trade. They look at it as a 10-year transaction. So you shouldn't worry about what you give us now, whether or not he's going to be available in the short term. He's going to be your quarterback for 10 years. So give us what we want, because you're getting a franchise quarterback that's going to change potentially the fortune of your team.
But if you're the Dolphins, what do you need to know before you make this deal? And what can you know before this?
You know, the most important question is what happens with the grand jury that's eventually going to hear the 10 criminal complaints that have been made against Watson. The 22 civil complaints, they're not going to be resolved, but they're not nearly as troubling because you're not going to go to jail over the outcome of the 22 civil complaints. The most pressing question, Dan, is if the Dolphins would trade for him today and then want to put him on the field on Sunday against the Falcons. I mean, that's extreme, but they would want to have him at practice. They'd want to have him ready to play in games. What will the league do? We reported several weeks back that the league has not made any decision about paid leave for Deshaun Watson because it doesn't have to. The Texans already have him on paid leave. He's getting paid. He's not playing. The league doesn't have to do anything. Why make a decision about paid leave when you don't have to? But the moment he'd be traded to a team that wants to put him on the field, that's when the league would have to activate its own process and make a decision. Do we put him on paid leave or do we not? And I think it would be naive to overlook the body blows that the league has been taking over the Washington football team investigation, the email scandal and everything else. How does that factor into the broader PR assessment of what do we do with Deshaun Watson now that he's in a position where he's playing with these charges pending against him?
Okay, but how do you suspend somebody who doesn't have criminal charges pending?
Well, there's enough language in the personal conduct policy to give the NFL the discretion based upon what they already know, based upon the investigation they've already done. If they want to come to the conclusion that it's possible that Deshaun Watson may have violated one or more of the terms of the personal conduct policy, they can say you're on paid leave. And the NFL doesn't view that as punishment. As wrong as that is, football players want to play football, but they don't view telling a guy you get paid to not play as punishment. They view it as no big deal. Well, it is a big deal for guys who want to play football and for the teams that want them to play.
But so why not suspend him now, though, Mike? Why,
because there's no reason to do it. Why do it? Why make a move? Why create a news cycle? Here's what happens. If they would put him on paid leave now, because that's what this is, suspension with pay under the personal conduct policy, you create a headline. You create an AP story that ends up in every newspaper and on every website. We're talking about it. How's the NFL justify putting Deshaun Watson on the commissioner exempt list when no charges have actually been finalized against him? There's no reason to do it. There's no reason to do it. And I had someone from the league office explain this to me. Why make a step that could be a misstep when you just don't have to do it? The Texans are already paying him to not play.
We reached out to the Texans and we said, why isn't Deshaun Watson playing? And we said, whose decision? No response.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't want to play for them. They don't want him to play and get injured and diminish the trade value. I think at some point it was just decided mutually, this is where we are. We're going to pay you to not play. We're going to trade you. And I think they've been leading him to think it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. The question is, do they get it done before November 2, or do they kick it over to next year? I think that they run the risk, if they don't trade him by November 2, that he shows up and says, I'm ready to go. Let's go play some football. Now, I don't know that he's inclined to do that, but they run that risk because I think they've been telling him, we'll get this done. And that window closes in 12 days.
Nobody wants Tua? Like, what happens to Tua Tagovailoa if Deshaun Watson ends up in Miami?
Well, if Deshaun Watson ends up on paid leave, you need Tua at least for the rest of the season. Now, he's got that rookie wage scale, salary, and cap hit, and it's not as difficult as it would have been 10, 15 years ago from a cap standpoint to move him. But yeah, then you got to have to ask yourself, where does he go? And who's going to give you anything of value for a guy who is showing us 1 week at a time that he's not going to be a franchise quarterback? That's what this all comes back to. They picked Tua over Justin Herbert. And the Tua Mafia is starting to relent, I think, after the month that he missed with the broken ribs and how he played. I mean, they lost to the Jaguars. They're up 10 points. They lost to the Jaguars, who hadn't won a game in 20 straight. I think people are starting to realize Tua is not going to be what the Dolphins are looking for, which is basically their next Dan Marino. And they've been trying to find him for more than 20 years.
A lot of revisionist history with Justin Herbert. Like, he wasn't a sure thing.
I know, but it's amazing to me, Dan, and I don't get too deep into the weeds pre-draft because we're trying to cover the whole league and everything that's happening. But you've met Tua. I've met Tua. Tua is short, and Tua isn't built like a Russell Wilson or a Drew Brees. He's got a slight build to him. He had the injury questions coming in. I don't see how anyone wouldn't have decided to do an extra deep dive on Herbert versus Tua, because Herbert's got the size, he's got the physique, and obviously he's been the better pick. And I think the Dolphins just viewed it as a no-brainer. Here's Tua. We want Tua. The other guy they wanted was Joe Burrow. They couldn't get the Bengals to trade out of number 1. There was never a discussion about the Dolphins wanting Justin Herbert, and it should have at least been a discussion.
Yeah, and I go back to the draft, and I had a source who said, one thing you have to understand is, how do you assess an Alabama quarterback? Because he has first-round draft picks. They get open. You don't have to throw them open. And Mac Jones dealt with this. They don't throw receivers open. They're open. You get to the pros, you must throw a receiver open. And, Dwayne Haskins had this at Ohio State. That's why it's hard sometimes when you look at this and goes, how good is that quarterback? Justin Herbert has the arm to throw a receiver open, and Tua does not.
And part of it, too, is you don't see those skills on display until you get to the next level. Yeah. And the challenge becomes more difficult. Do you rise up to it? One of the knocks on Deshaun Watson coming out of Clemson, too many interceptions. And good luck cutting down on the interceptions when the window for getting a guy the football shrinks. Well, you know what happened to Deshaun Watson? By necessity, he got more accurate at the next level. So a lot of it is you don't know what's going to happen until they get there. But the warning signs were there with Tua, but Stephen Ross wanted Tua. And there was no one in the organization with the ability to push back on Stephen Ross. And now Stephen Ross wants Deshaun, and I feel like he's going to get him unless somebody else swoops in and says to the Texans, we'll give you what you want and send Deshaun our way.
We're talking to Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live, co-host with Chris Sims, the show that precedes this on Peacock. The Baker Mayfield situation is interesting because he's going to, I guess Ian Rappaport said he's going to need surgery on that shoulder at the end of the year, but he's going to try to play through this. Do you have enough of a sample size where if you're the Cleveland Browns, you say, okay, that's our franchise quarterback moving forward, and we're going to pony up $40 million a year?
No, absolutely not. And I laughed in the offseason. They asked Browns general manager Andrew Berry whether or not the Jared Goff and Carson Wentz contracts become cautionary tales for the Browns, and he said no. I think he had to say no. The problem is Baker is headstrong. He's a little prickly. He wants to take charge, and he views himself as being a great quarterback, and that confidence has served him well. But if you look at his press conference from earlier this week, when he basically acted like it was his birthright to be the quarterback of the Browns, and it's up to him and no one else whether he's going to play with this injured shoulder. I couldn't believe that he said that, because it's not up to him. And at some point, he is sufficiently diminished while he's trying to play with a harness on and a shoulder that keeps popping out and popping back in. He's sufficiently diminished where it makes more sense to go with the backup. And Case Keenum has proven he can get it done, especially when working with Kevin Stefanski. They went to the NFC Championship together in Minnesota 4 years ago. So with Baker, now the bigger question is, what do you do? And Dan, this is something that kind of flickered for me yesterday. You look at the veteran quarterbacks out there that are looking for a Tom Brady scenario where they can go somewhere where the team has everything but me. Whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, one of these veterans that is dissatisfied with the current situation, wants to go to a place where the deck is stacked in their favor to win. The Browns become very attractive. They'd have to move on from Baker, but the Browns become attractive. And Russell Wilson, by the way, was born in Ohio. Wouldn't that be a story if Russell Wilson? And remember, it was back in 2018 that there was some talk about the Seahawks trading Wilson to the Browns for the first overall pick that became Baker Mayfield. So get ready for that, because I think that's going to be coming in the offseason.
But I think Seattle would have taken Josh Allen.
Well, you could make the argument that Josh Allen's the best of that pack. It's either him or Lamar Jackson.
I was just told that Seattle did so much homework on Josh Allen that they were going to take Josh Allen. If they made that move, they were number one pick, they were taking Josh Allen.
5 quarterbacks taken in that first round. 2 of them clear cut. And the other 3, well, look, we know Josh Rosen, done. Sam Darnold, who knows? Baker Mayfield, the only fair assessment at this point is who knows.
Why would Aaron Rodgers leave the NFC North? When you pencil in 4 wins, you got the Bears and the Lions, you got 4 wins, and you'll take one of the 2 games against Minnesota. So you got 5 wins guaranteed. Why would he want to leave that?
He laid out all of his concerns when he showed up for training camp. And I don't think those concerns automatically go away for a guy who's as headstrong as Aaron Rodgers. If there's a better opportunity out there for him to add to his legacy, these guys want to add to their legacies. I say this all the time. When there's a kid who's like 8 or 9 years old and he always has to win at everything he does, we're like, that's a distasteful quality, Jimmy. Let the other kids have a turn. Let the other kids win from time to time. But when they're adults and they're playing football, we worship that mindset where I got to win at everything. I got to win. I got to win. I got to win. I've got to win. It's not enough that I'm good and I contribute to the cause. I want to go to a place where everything is lined up in my favor to win. And if there's another opportunity like that out there for Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he wanted to go to the 49ers. Could you imagine how good the 49ers would be if he was their quarterback and not Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance?
So don't you think it comes down to, maybe Tom Brady saying, are you going to stay with that bleep? And he was talking about Garoppolo in San Francisco. If they were going to move on, they've been trying to move on. Or maybe he was talking about Trubisky with Chicago. I don't know.
Tom Brady wanted to play for the 49ers, and the 49ers said, no, thank you. And I think all this kind of strange dysfunction we've seen from the 49ers this year, where they trade up from 12 to 3 and they want Mac Jones unless they don't, and they take Trey Lance, and is he going to start, and what's up with Jimmy? I think they have freaked themselves out with torment, because they could have had Patrick Mahomes in 2017. They took Solomon Thomas instead because they thought they were getting Kirk Cousins the next year. And between the draft and free agency, they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo. And then they had Tom Brady wanting to come home and play for the team he rooted for growing up. He was at the catch game. He wanted to come back. And, what did the 49ers see last year in the Super Bowl? Mahomes and Brady. And I think that freaked them out. And they're still trying to recover from that.
And then Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers thought maybe the Rams or maybe the Niners. That's where he was that he was told that.
Dan, I think he was told that the Packers were going to trade him. And at some point between January and April, they changed their mind. And I think that's one of the reasons why this went to DEFCON 5 or DEFCON 1, whatever the worst one is. I can never remember. But that's why, one of the reasons why in late April, this blew up, because I think he was led to believe they were going to trade him. And then they eventually said, sorry, we can't do it this year.
The man who has no awards, Mike Florio.
None whatsoever.
Pro Football Talk Live. Well, maybe one day, Mike.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I seek and will accept no external praise. Once you know you're not going to get it, it's very easy to take a stand on principle and say you don't want it.
It's like the coach who takes himself out of the running for the job that he knows he's not going to get.
I know that I will never get a vote, for example, like on who gets into the Hall of Fame. So I take a stand on principle that I don't want one. Don't give it to me. I don't want it.
Thank you,
because
Mike.
you're not going to give it to me anyway. See you, Dan.
That's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk and ProFootballTalk.com.